Hiya homebrewers, I am JabeerIni and I'll show you today how I'll brew the pumpkin ale I'll be drinking Halloween's night. This is the first time I'll be adding spices to a brew, so fortunately that will allow me to gain some experience for the winter warmer I'll be brewing and then drinking for Christmas. So there you go, there's an advance of one of my future brews. Before starting, there is some prep work you need to do. You need to roast a pumpkin, or as in my case, you need to roast a butternut squash. Why a butternut squash and not a pumpkin? Well, apparently, according to what I've read, the butternut squash has a more pumpkin-y flavor than the pumpkin. Don't ask me the logic behind that, I just read it and I follow the advice of more experienced homebrewers. Anyway, here are some pics of me carrying out the complex process of roasting a butternut squash. So here it is in one piece. You cut it in half and you don't even bother taking off the seeds. You put it upside down in a tray with a little water so that it doesn't stick or burns. You put it in the oven at 175 degrees for 1 hour. And that's it. Tomorrow I'll give you some news about our wee heavy, some good news. So with that being said, and without further ado, let's get brewing! Alright, so here we're in the kitchen. Let's open this. This is my Rock IPA. I chilled it just a little bit. Let's give it a pour. And that's what I'll be drinking today while brewing the pumpkin IPA. There we have it. I intentionally poured it not gently at all, a little bit aggressively, just for you to see the head that it has, and it's very consistent. It's very velvety, can't hear a thing, and it's very, very hoppy. I'm really happy with this one. I know you hear me say that quite often, except for 3 or 4 beers with which I haven't been really happy. But yeah, in general, I'm really happy with the beers I brew, and it's that simple. So, cheers! It's a rock star. So let's take a look at the ingredients we'll be using. Okay, first off, 5 liters of water, 720 grams of Maris Otter, 90 grams of Munich, 60 grams of Special W, 450 grams of butternut squash, which is actually the protagonist of this beer. And that's it for the fermentable side. Now the hops. 3 grams of Simcoe for bittering, and 5 grams of Ahtanum for flavor. Now the spices. 3 cloves and half a stick of cinnamon. As fining agent, I'll be using a quarter of a tablet of protafloc. And last, but most important, our yeast. This is a US 05 I harvested from the Punk IPA we brewed some weeks ago. So since this brew has Ahtanum and Simcoe in it, I think this will be more or less in the family. So that's it. Let's get it on. So first, let's pour the whole content of this bottle in the pot, and let's get it to 65 degrees. And of course, in the meantime, I'll be measuring the grains and hops and the pumpkin. And here we have the whole thing. This is the grains all together. Here we have 3 grams of Simcoe, which will be added at 60 minutes, so just as soon as the boil starts, and 5 grams of Ahtanum, which will be added 15 minutes before the end of the boil. Here we have our pumpkin, which will be added all together with the grains to the mash. And finally, the cloves and the cinnamon sticks will be added at 12 minutes before the end of the boil. So since our water is now at the desired temperature, let's start the mash. And in it goes. Alright, so this will be a 60-minute mash. I'll be back once it's done. Cheers! Alright, 60 minutes have passed. The mash is over. Look at that color. It's really, really beautiful. And I can smell the butternut squash is very present here. So hopefully that's going to be the case of the final product. And simultaneously I turned the heat to maximum power so that we can start the boil. So I'll be back once this is done and we have a rolling boil for the bittering hop addition. Cheers! Alright, and here's the boil that we needed for the bittering hop additions. Well, it's only one addition. 3 grams of Simcoe. And now we just have to wait until 12 minutes before the end of the boil for the spices. I'll be back then. Cheers! Alright, and here we are 15 minutes before the end of the boil. I know I said I'd be back 12 minutes before the end of the boil for the spices addition, but it's actually time for the flavor hop addition, which is 15 minutes. In any case, the recipe is in the description below. And now, I confirm, I'll be back 12 minutes before the end of the boil for the spices addition. Cheers! Okay, 12 minutes before the end of the boil, and here we have 3 cloves and actually a quarter of a cinnamon stick, because I realized half was a little bit too much, and I don't want it to be overpowering. I just want it to be well balanced, and that cinnamon stick smells, well, it has a strong smell. And so I think that that'll be enough. And I'll be back in 2 minutes, well, less than 2 minutes, for the protafloc addition. Cheers! Okay, 10 minutes before the end of the boil, time to add a quarter of a tablet of protafloc, and I can tell you the smell is beautiful here. It smells like Christmas. Even if this is for Halloween. So, now everything has been added, and I'll be back once the boil is done. Alright, time's up. So it's time to cool this down and transfer it to the fermenter. I'll be back. And here we have it ready to be transferred to the fermenter. Before that, I'm going to strain out the hops the usual way. So I'll be back once it all is done. Cheers! Alright, so here we have our wort, along with the sample I took for the gravity rating, and as you can see, it's 1058. So that's gonna be a good 5 point something ABV, which is nice. And it's time to pitch the yeast. For the yeast I collected some of the wort when it was boiling before the bittering hop addition. So I created some sort of starter here. And here we go. Make sure everything goes in there. Alright. And this is, again, officially it. So I'll see you tomorrow. And I'll give you some updates. Cheers! And here we are next day. Good morning. As you can see there in the back, there is our future pumpkin ale. Its activity has been rather slow. I would say even slower than usual for the US-05, which is the same one I used for the wee heavy. At this time, which is 12, more or less, well, actually less than 12 hours after the brewing was complete, the wee heavy was already bubbling in a stable way, which is not the case with the pumpkin ale. It's barely bubbling. But I'm not worried. I know it's going to be a great ale. And for some reason, the yeast activity, the fermentation periods have been rather longer than they used to be. I don't know. I don't know if it's the radiator that is working differently because of the season. But just to give you an idea, the Cooper's IPA took 21 days to ferment, so that's the longest fermentation period I've had. Normally, fermentation was complete between 10, maximum 14 days. The wee heavy is now in its 15th day, and you see, there's still some very little activity, but there is some. So I guess I'll take a gravity reading tomorrow, and if it's ready, if it's within the desired range, then I'll just bottle it. So that's all I can tell you. The smell is beautiful. The smell of the pumpkin ale. It smells like a sweet thing. Yesterday when I tried the sample I took for the gravity rating, it didn't taste too much to like pumpkin. It tastes. You can certainly taste the cinnamon, not in a very powerful proportion. I couldn't taste the cloves at all, and there is some very little taste to pumpkin that I hope will remain there. Apart from that, all I can tell you is that you can see there's a huge amount of sediment, and it's composed of two layers. The lower layer is the hop sediment. That is, I'm really familiar with that one, but on top of that, there is another layer of pumpkin fiber, and you can easily spot the difference. They're different in color and in density, so that's new. I'm glad that I got a good amount of wort, because with all that sediment, I don't believe I'll get more than 7 500 milliliters bottles. But in any case, we'll see. And that's it for this week. My next brew will be a challenge again. I will try to brew an ale that is the closest thing to a lager in terms of flavor, in terms of color, in terms of everything. And I'll tell you why in due course. For the time being, if you like what you see, like, and don't forget to subscribe. And as usual, thanks for watching. Cheers and beers!